The Jared Dillian Show.
I'm Jared Dillian. This is the Jared Dillian Show. If you want to call to talk about your money, please call 844-305-7800. That's 844-305-7800. This is the Jared Dillian Show. These are exciting times. I just saw that a number of cases in Italy are going down. So that's good news, but not much good news out there. I want to tell a story about saving. The year was 1996, and we got a bread machine as a gift. So we still have that bread machine. So we've had it. Actually, it was 97. We got it as a wedding present. And we still have it to this day. We actually made it, it's funny. We use it all the time. But we used it the other day because we were out of hamburger buns, and we made, Beyond Meat hamburgers. So we made hamburgers, and we didn't have buns, so my wife made buns. She made buns in the bread machine. We had pizza a couple weeks ago. We made the pizza dough in the bread machine. So we use that thing all the time. We have had it for 23 years. And we started back then in 1997, we started making bread instead of buying bread. This was the wild thing. So I was in the Coast Guard. My wife was, she was doing archaeology stuff. And together we were making about $45,000 a year. And we said, well, if we make our own bread, it'll be cheaper than buying bread. This was the thought process. Now, it was ludicrous because, this is the late 90s, so I want to say a loaf of bread cost 49 cents. So we were saving about 30 cents a pop or whatever, but that's what we were doing to save money. And that saying, the greatest thing since sliced bread in a bread machine, it's not sliced. So you had to cut it with a bread knife. And I probably, cut my finger a whole bunch of times. But we actually did the math on how much it costs to make our own bread. So it costs, I think, to make our own bread, it costs 45 cents a loaf. And back then, a loaf of cheap bread was 99 cents. So we were saving 54 cents. And maybe if you're talking about the more expensive bread, it was like $1.50. But we made bread for about, consistently, I want to say for about 6 or 7 years. And over 6 or 7 years, we saved about $350 making bread. We were making bread when we were in California, and I would get up, I was working on the options exchange, and I would get up at 3:45 in the morning, and I would, I was lifting weights like crazy back then, so I would make like 6 eggs. And I would make this giant egg sandwich with this homemade bread. And that's what we did. So now let me just say that $350 over 7 years is not really a lot of money. And if you compound that at 8%, maybe you get a few $1,000 in retirement, and it's a lot more convenient and a lot less work to buy bread. And one of the things I talk about is it's the big things, not the little things. So this is definitely a little thing. But it's really the idea that counts. And that's what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about saving $350 by making your own bread. I'm not telling you to do that because that would be absurd. I'm not telling people here to make their own bread. What I'm talking about is the lengths that we were willing to go to save money. The lengths that we were willing to go to save money. And the good thing is that we were already poor, so it was not like we had to take down our standard of living. And that's why it's really hard for people to save. If people get in the habit of spending and they spend on luxuries, I mean, for sure, if you've been buying bread from the store for 20 years and then you say, well, we got to save money, and you start making your own bread, it's going to be arduous. It's going to be absolutely arduous. But people really, they need to get religion about their spending because taking down your standard of living is so hard. Saving money is hard. And that's why you should do it while you're young, not when you're old. Because when you're young, it's easier because I'm assuming, my assumption is that you already have a lower standard of living and you can put up with this discomfort and inconvenience. Okay? It becomes very hard to do. Just this whole idea of your standard of living. You can take your standard of living up over time. And if you have to take it down, it's very painful. And this is being experienced all across the country right now, is because people's investments are down on average 30 to 35%, and they have to take down their standard of living because they say, well, I'm not going to have as much for retirement. So it's called a wealth effect. Economists call this a wealth effect, is that you see the value of your investments going down, so you start decreasing your consumption, and it's painful. It's painful. So one of the things I actually said this to myself years ago. I said, I always want my standard of living to be going up. Okay? And what that means is you have to take up your standard of living very slowly in small increments. And it also helps to have a huge cash buffer so that if you do run into hard times, you don't really have to take your standard of living down. This is how we're living right now. It's hard to communicate the level of asceticism my wife and I lived under when we were 22 years old. And the funny thing is that we never felt like we needed anything. We used to take trips to the mall. The mall was like 90 minutes away. It was in Bremerton. And we would just walk around the mall and not buy anything. We weren't interested in buying anything. We didn't care. We went there a bunch of times, and I don't think we bought something once. Maybe I bought a couple of CDs now and then. But yeah, I'm not telling you to make your own bread. We also have an ice cream maker, but the ice cream maker is not really it's not at all for saving money. The ice cream maker is just for fun. By the way, we have these, every once in a while we have these ice cream competitions here in town. My wife has a bunch of friends, and we'll sort of develop these new and exotic flavors of ice cream, but it's not, we will go to the store, and if we get a craving for ice cream, we'll go to the store and buy a pint. So, if you have a spending problem, you need to get radical about it. And I'm not talking about making bread. First should be the house and the car. Smaller house, cheaper car. If you do those two things, you should be good. But beyond that, there's a million other ways to cut. And going out to eat, that's not a problem now. For the first 2 years of our marriage, we never went out to eat. For the next 3 years, we went out to eat once a week, and it cost us about $15 or $20. All this expense cutting stuff shouldn't be necessary if you get the house and the car and the student loans right. Remember, it's the big things, not the little things. But remember, every personal finance guru out there says it's a million little things that get you to be a millionaire. It's wrong. It's a few big things. I never, it's funny. Making bread is just, it's emblematic of your commitment to saving money. And, by all means, don't start making bread. I'm Jared Dillian. This is the Jared Dillian Show.
Jared Dillian. Now you know a rich guy.